So, Anthony Leithauser joining the Foster Finance podcast. This is my original business partner with ASAP Snow Removal and FosterHauser Productions. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my podcast debut, so this is very exciting and new to me. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is fun.
Didn't you do Lane's podcast once?
Me, no, never.
No, you never did? Okay.
I think she may have wanted me to, but I don't think we ever sat down and did it.
Yeah, this is my white whale interview, so I'm pumped.
It's fun.
So, we are cousins, by the way, everybody who's watching.
Hmm.
So, we have
Go
had
way back.
an Oh yeah, all way back to birth. But we have had, I would say, an entrepreneurial spirit from a very young age. I don't know when it started, but probably, what would you say, when you were in like fourth or fifth grade?
Well, I'm trying to think. Was it FosterHauser first, or was it no? It was definitely ASAP Snow Removal first.
Yeah, ASAP
Right.
came first for sure. Yeah.
Anthony and Steven, always perfect. ASAP Snow
Yeah.
Removal. We had a
Yeah.
website we put up.
I'll pop it up. I'll pop it up in this.
Oh, you could
A
do that.
little,
Does it
a little
still exist?
flyer. I don't know if the website exists, but I have the flyer. We were going around door to door asking people, getting rejected, but we had our regular customers, church people. Who else? Mr. Monopoly.
We had Russian lady up the block. We had the Lumpkins down the block.
Hmm.
We had the old man over on Hoover. He was a
Oh,
really
Mr.
great
King.
guy, Mr. King. He was
Yeah, he
really
was
a
great.
sweet guy. But yeah, we had a lot of reoccurring customers within like a 4 to 5 block radius that even to the day, like, and when we said like we started this, I was probably 10 and you were like 8. And we were so young and just working all day because we used to get a lot of big storms and it was great for business. And we'd be out there all day. All our friends would be out snowboarding and sledding, and we'd be just grinding outside, like not eating, just going from job to job. I remember one really funny story with that Russian lady up the block, and it still to this day was the best Gatorade that I've ever tasted.
I was gonna bring that up.
we
Yeah.
we had been working, like it was probably the fifth job of the day, and it was a lot of snow. And this woman spoke very broken English, and so she came out. She saw us probably just so disheveled and just worked to the bone. So she gave us Gatorades, and I think it was an orange Gatorade, and it was the most delicious Gatorade I've ever tasted. Like,
She put something in it for sure. There's no way it
yeah,
was just Gatorade. It
it gave
tasted
me
too
enough
good.
energy to finish her house. And then I think later in the day, she came back out because she saw me in the backyard, and I didn't really fully understand what she was saying. But she comes out, she's like, "You cold?" But it was broken English. So I didn't understand. And I just kept nodding my head because I was young. I was like 10 years old, I guess. And then all of a sudden, and this is right when you're coming around the corner, she comes out with this jacket. And I didn't want to be rude to her. So as you're coming around the corner, you look up, I see you coming around the corner, and she's like putting the jacket on me. And you're just like, what is going on? Why is he putting on a jacket? That was
Yeah.
so funny. But yeah, we were at that for a long time, a lot of repeat customers. And I got calls when I was like a freshman in college, probably like 7, 8 years later, from some of the people down the block to be like, "Hello, it's supposed to snow tomorrow. Are you still shoveling snow?" And I'm like, "I'm in college." Like,
Yeah, there was an awkward period. You had just left for college and I was a junior, and I was still doing a job here and there by myself because people were calling. I mean, we didn't tell anybody we stopped, so but we did. I think we
mhm.
tried to give it to the Franks, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
tried to get it to. I think they did do a couple of them, but they didn't continue on with it.
We should have sold the business. We had such a strong brand.
We had a lot of clients.
Hmm.
But we did really well for such a young age. Obviously, we did a good job, and we did a good job like marketing too, because we would go door to door and hand out those flyers and make the calls, even if we weren't getting calls. We'd be like, "Hey, do you want us to come by?" Or just going door to door, knocking and asking. You're getting out of your comfort zone as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and like just getting out there. And I feel bad for the kids now because there's no snow, at least in this area. And like it was such an integral part of the development of the entrepreneurial spirit because you saw the direct result of your work. I mean, obviously you're moving snow from place to place, so it's clean. You see that result, then you also get paid right away in cash. And it was fulfilling. I remember when I was younger, like I usually didn't get any kind of allowance. I had to work to like make money and buy whatever I wanted. So it funded some fun toys for me when I was younger. I don't know if you remember that blue scooter.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I basically was like a Vespa for teenagers. It had
Hmm.
like a trunk and it had a horn and lights, and I was zooming up and down the streets with that thing. I think I bought my PSP with the money that I we made from snow removal. But yeah, it was great. It was a great experience.
I bought my first car with that money. I
Yeah.
saved it up throughout my whole entire 7, 8 year career or whatever, and
Yeah.
That got me my first car. Yeah, it was a great job for us because we were both athletes, and when you're a young kid, you can't really work even regular a low paying job because you have school and then athletics, so you're pretty busy. But on the snow days, it kind of all got canceled, so it was a great opportunity to go out and make some money because you had really
Mhm.
nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And we lived so close, I didn't have to drive to you. I could just walk to your house.
Yeah,
So it was
yeah. Oh,
great.
yeah, because you were over on Pascack at that time. That's true.
Yep.
Did I send you that video of the two kids? It was like a Ring video recording, and the two kids go up and they ask, "Hey, do you want us to shovel your snow for like $20?" And the people agree. And as soon as the door closes, they're like jumping up and down and so excited. They're like, "We got it. We're gonna get the money." And then what did they say at the end? It was really sweet. They were like,
We're
"We
gonna
have to
be
do a really
rich.
good job." Yeah, they're just like, we're gonna be rich, but then they were like, but we have to do a really good job. But yeah, it reminded us of the ASAP snow removal days.
Yep. And that was right before we parlayed into FosterHauser Productions. That was a much shorter tenure, but we made a few great cornhole boards. And how many boards did we make? Do we make two or three sets of boards?
I think at least three sets because we have one in my house still that literally it will never. That is the heaviest set of cornhole boards you will ever see or feel. They're like they're heavy duty. I mean, we have like full inch plywood on there all around. Like they're heavy duty. Those things are not going anywhere. And then we made yours that you have at your house, and we used a much lighter wood. I think it was a teak wood, which is better for outside. And then we instituted some cup holders into the back part of it. So if you're holding your beer or drink, you could put it down and put it in a cup holder while you're throwing. And then may have done another set for my cousins. My cousin Tracy when they got married. I don't know. We made quite a few sets.
I should mention that we were ahead of the trend because, I mean, now you
Mhm.
see cornhole on TV and it's on ESPN. And when we started, somehow you were the one who originally got interested in it. And it was before basically the world. I mean, I guess it was more popular in the South probably, but up
Well,
by
it was
us,
always like a big game, yeah, down south. Yeah, exactly. And that's where we came across it was when we would go to North Carolina since I guess 2008 was like the first year we went down there. It's like a major backyard summer outside game. So we started, I think, I don't remember the first time we ever played, but I think we just got hooked. And I think the next year, I don't know if you remember with the Beckmeyers and their friends, we were playing nonstop. And if it was raining outside, the third floor of the houses would have these high ceilings. So we'd bring the boards up and play all night inside. And yeah, we've had a lot of really fun family moments playing cornhole.
we had like 20 team tournaments.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, real
It,
deal.
it, it got
Hmm.
intense. And grandma was a great player, by the way.
Yes, that's what's great about
That's why it's a
cornhole.
great game. Young to
Yeah.
old, like Ava was maybe like 12 and 10 years old, and she went to the championship a couple of years back against us, the
Hmm.
Croatian cousins, and we took them down. But yeah, so young and old, like it's a great game. It's a fun game.
So then you went to college at TCNJ where you played
Hmm.
football.
I did
And
2 years.
what was it, your junior year? You did a semester abroad?
My sophomore year, my sophomore spring.
Sophomore.
Yeah, which usually most people go in their junior spring. And so I was surprised because I had applied with my one friend to go and do it together, and he was denied. So then that put some pressure on me to say, like, oh, do I want to wait maybe till next year or just go by myself? So I went by myself, and I never spoke Italian, and I didn't know anybody from my school or from any of the other schools going. So I really like went out there by myself. And I remember the flight was my first international flight. So I remember we boarded. Something was wrong with the plane. We deboarded. They fixed it. I don't know what it was. We got back on the plane. We deboarded again because the problem wasn't actually fixed. And we ended up leaving like 4 hours later. I had to miss my connection flight, but luckily they gave me a $10 voucher to spend in the airport. So thank
So
you.
generous.
Yes, very nice. I think it was in Lisbon. I think the transfer was in Lisbon. But by the time I actually got to Bologna, which is the city that I studied in, it was pitch black. And I didn't speak any Italian. I just knew that I was at the airport in Bologna and I had to get to the campus. And so the best advice that the school had given us was to write down on an index card the address of the school and just hand the index card to the taxi driver and hope that he is a good person and will drive you to that address and not just drive you wherever and drop you off wherever. So I get there, it's like pitch black. All I see is like maybe this 50-yard, maybe 30-yard path that leads to this building. And he stops, he points, I said, okay, grazie, ciao. I get out and I'm just walking down this path. Finally, like a minute into the walk, I see the sign of the school that I'm like attending. I was like, oh, okay, good. And I was like, wow, that was an adventure just to get there for sure.
And that trip had a massive impact on your life. It had a butterfly effect across your whole life, probably, right?
Yeah, I've really embraced the Italian heritage of mine, and it's also kind of taken over my life in terms of my career too. We'll get to that. I just want to tell one fun story from Bologna. I think it was literally my second or third day there. And I had heard from other people that like the best thing you can do in studying abroad situations is getting yourself a bike so you can be independent and like get from place to place and not have to worry about transit. I go to one of the advisors there and I say, hey, where can I buy a used bike? I really want to have one to go back and forth to the classes and to the city because it was about 20 minutes outside of the city by foot if you were to walk where the campus was. And I kid you not, he said, you can get a bike from the same people that will sell you drugs. I was like, what? I said, okay, what does that mean? And then he just said Piazza Verde. I said, Piazza Verde. So then I started talking to like some of the other people and like some of the students that are there full time that are Italian and some other nationalities that study there. They go, oh yeah, Piazza Verde. You'll see Pakistani men walking around all around the square. There's like one here, two here, like, and they stand out in a group of Italian people. You'll know where the Pakistani people are. And so they say, just go up to them. And this is the words you need to say. You need to say bici usata, which means used bike. And then if you want to negotiate, say no, 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 like no, less. So that's what we did. Me and my friend Ryan Pilcher, because I sold him on the idea. He's like, hell yeah, I want a bike too. So we went up to the Pakistani man, just like kind of yelled at us in Italian, and we walked away from him. Located another Pakistani man and approached him, and he just said no, no, and we walked away. So we gave up after the second attempt and we're walking away. And then this young Pakistani boy, he's probably like 12, comes running over to us. He's like, ragazzi, bici usati. Like, guys, use bikes. And so we say, yes. And he's like, follow me. So we follow him to the other side of the piazza. And on this pole in the middle of the piazza or cement block, whatever it was, he has two bikes just laying up against each other. And this all happened within like 5 minutes. I don't know where they're storing these bikes, this black market that they have running there, but within 5 minutes, they had the bikes, two bikes ready to go right there. And we took them and we rode away. We didn't really haggle too much. I think we spent like 30 or 40 euro for each bike, which was a steal, literally. But it was a great deal. That's my main form of transportation throughout. It was great.
So we're back and I'm in a new spot because it was lagging a bit. So hopefully the connection is better now. I don't know if you were done, but you were in the middle of telling a story about how you bought bikes from little Pakistani kids in Italy. Could you finish that?
Oh yeah, it's pretty much finished. But there's one little minor detail at the end of the story that was kind of funny. Just being that we both were straight from America. The guy I was with, Ryan, his bike's brakes just didn't work, so there was no brakes on the bike, and we realized that about 10 minutes after we had just bought them and ran away. So us silly Americans thinking that there's a return policy on a black market used bike, we go back to the guy in the square and we say, "Hey, these brakes don't work." And we got into a little bit of an altercation and they start grabbing the bikes and they're like, these are our bikes. And so we ended up having to pay another $20 to them to like take the bikes again. I pedaled off and I think Ryan sprinted off. So we got out of there. But yeah, that was within 3 days of being there. We acquired bikes and had a little more freedom being out there and able to explore the city and be on our own. So it was a great move. Anybody out there going to study abroad or live an extended period of time in another country or city, get a bike for sure.
Pro tip right there. So then when you got back, you somehow got introduced to your business partner who you're still with today, Tom. That's kind of a quirky story, right? It was just happenstance that you somehow got connected.
Yeah, it really worked out just coincidentally. I had just come back from my semester. Oh, this is better. Sorry. I was
Yeah.
getting too comfortable in this rocking chair. So I had just come back from my semester abroad. I had gone to actually Lane's brother's lacrosse game because he went to Bergen Catholic. So I went to watch one of their playoff games or something. And we ended up going out to dinner with Lane's family. I was talking about my experiences that I just had a couple months ago in studying abroad in Italy. It just so happened like a week or two later, Lane's mother had a mutual connection to Tom, who just happened to be coming out of retirement and needed help to support an Italian Navy ship that was going to be visiting Canada and the USA. So I was a sophomore going into my junior year of college. So I was already looking for internships in the summer. So I viewed it as like a perfect opportunity to get some exposure to just any kind of exposure and experience in business. And it was a perfect fit for me because I had just gotten back. I had the travel bug. I just gotten back from Italy, from that culture. So to have a ship full of Italians coming here and to be able to work with them day to day was like really a cool experience. And it was just a perfect fit for me and Tom too. He had done this for many years. He had a ship supply business in New York City and then also in New Jersey. But he'd sold those, but he always continued to communicate and work with the Italian Navy when they would call. That was like his special thing that he really enjoyed. He would protect that, wouldn't give it to anyone else, like really enjoyed that work. He's got some great stories. Like he would be a great person to have on the podcast as well. He's had some amazing experiences all over the world in different foreign ports and building relationships with these people over many years and working with different ships. But when we were connected, he had been retired for 10 years and didn't really have anything. Like he sold all his businesses off. He had been retired, just in Florida, playing golf, hanging out, and just got the call from the embassy in Washington. And they said, "Hey, do you think you can help us out? We're having trouble with our current supplier. We know you've been retired, but maybe you'd like to help us out when it gets to Canada and the United States." And so I think he went to Bermuda to see the ship first, to meet the people, to see if he still had the feeling and wanted to do it. And he did. He got like that passion and excitement back into him, and he was really excited, but he had nobody to work for him. And this was right when I was coming back. So the timelines really lined up perfectly. My first city that I worked with the Italian Navy with the ship is in Boston in 2017. And it wasn't just a normal ship, it was actually the Amerigo Vespucci, which has a reputation for being the most beautiful ship in the world. So it was really a special experience for me to be working. And I don't know if you've seen the ship. I'm sure I've shown you. Like it's a mystical ship. It looks like a pirate ship. It's got 3 masts, maybe 4 masts. It's a huge, beautiful, tall ship. Here, I have a picture of it right here.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I have the calendar that they put out for this year. Here's 2 pictures of it. You can kind of see.
Wow, that looks sick. Yeah. It looks old though. Is it 1900 something?
Yeah, so it's a funny story with the Vespucci. It was built in 1931. There was 2 ships, the Cristoforo Colombo and the Amerigo Vespucci. And after World War II, one of the ships was given as a prize of war to Russia. And so the rumor,
Ooh,
as
Russia.
it goes, yeah, Russia, because Italy had to pay reparations because in the beginning of World War II, they were on the other side of the Allies and they switched, but they had to pay reparations for certain things. So Russia, I think, ended up turning the ship into like a cargo ship and they didn't maintenance it and it's gone now. It's long gone by now. This ship, the Vespucci, is now plays a very historical and crucial role for the Italian Navy. Every member of the Italian Navy that enters as a cadet has to spend at least 100 days on board this ship so that they may learn the more traditional methods of sailing because they do not use the engines unless they absolutely have to. They're using everything by sail. This is funny. Like they have the guys climb, they're all harnessed in and everything, but they have the guys climb all the way up the mast, roll up the sails, bring them down, and it goes by height. So the shorter you are, the higher up you got to climb. If you're a taller guy, you stay on the lower levels. Yeah, so each cadet has spent 100 days on board that ship. The cadets sleep in hammocks on board. There's not a lot of space to store. It moves a whopping 5 knots. This is very slow. So it takes them a long time to get from port to port. But it's really like a magnificent, like historical, beautiful ship. And everybody knows it in the shipping and Navy world. Everybody knows the Amerigo Vespucci. Everybody in Italy knows it. It's really an icon of the Italian culture. And it's more of a diplomatic, they call it like a floating embassy because when they come, it attracts such a commotion and attraction to the ship because it's so beautiful and they have receptions on board and they embrace the local communities and do tours. for the public. So it's really, really a special ship. And they take really good care of it because the cadets are out there cleaning the brass every day. And yeah, that was my first ship up in Boston. And I followed it to New York. And I believe we were in one other city. I think it might have been Baltimore. And then they went back.
And you were just about to become very, very familiar with it, right? Before pre-pandemic, you guys had what, a year and a half trip lined up with that ship, and but then it all got canceled with the pandemic.
Yeah, the Vespucci was supposed to go to the Olympics in Japan, 2020 Olympics. We had won the bid for all the food supply throughout the entire trip, which was an 18-month trip around the world starting in March 2020. So we were actually in Italy. I remember it too vividly. We had just gotten back from the Arsenale, where the ship, like the Navy base in the north of Italy, where the ship is usually berthed. And we came back to Rome because we had some meetings, and we were sitting at dinner and we got a call from the captain of the ship, and he said, "We're so sorry, but we are postponing the trip indefinitely," because it was right at the beginning. It was March 2020, right at the beginning, where everybody, especially in Italy and China and northern Italy, COVID was starting to hit and starting to hit strong. And so they were very hesitant, and there was like we were communicating with different ports in different areas, and they were telling us all these new restrictions that they had for ships to even be able to come in, because I don't know if you remember, there was a lot of problems with cruise ships, because if you get one person with COVID on a ship, everybody will get it eventually. Yeah, it was very unfortunate. We were right there, we were ready to go. We got another call from an admiral. He said, "Look, you got to get out on the next flight back to the United States, because on Monday we're shutting the country down. Like, we're putting all those restrictions in play, and you may not be able to leave unless you leave before Monday." So we left Sunday, and we had half of our belongings up in the north of Italy and half of them in Rome. So we ended up having the hotel having to send all the luggage back by DHL, and we got out of there, which was very, very. I mean, we did like a year's worth of work in preparation to get to that point, to even be able to supply the ship over such a long period of time. And it was just taken from us, unfortunately, because of the circumstances around COVID.
But you guys bounced back, and what would you say was your first, I don't know, big accomplishment in working as a ship supplier? Would it be getting the Halon? Would it be your New York City trip? Which would you say was your first big thing where you said to yourself, okay, I can do this now?
It's been there's been a lot of different situations that we've been tasked with. Like you mentioned, the Halon is an interesting one. More towards the beginning, after I guess it was 2018, right after we started back up in 2017. One of our friends, who is a high-ranking official, he's a high-ranking admiral. He said to us, "Look, we need help locating this product, Halon, which is a fire suppressant. It's a very strong fire suppressant that'll put out fires that burn hot enough to burn like a destroyer or warship." So this is a very hard thing to get now, because it's not allowed to be produced anymore. Basically, once it's like used to extinguish a fire, it destroys the ozone, and it's just really terrible for the environment. So there's more clean substitutes for it now. And so the supply is constantly getting lower and lower of this suppressant. And the only way to get a new supply of it is for a company, which we found one actually in New Jersey, to find somewhere in the world an old supply of it and then recycle it back to its original form. So the supply just keeps getting lower and lower unless somebody finds an old supply and recycles it. And that's what we ended up doing. We found a lot of it, and they were very happy. That kind of helped pave the path back into being more mainstream and being considered for a lot more of the work.
Let's talk about the New York City trip. I don't know which boat you or ship you worked with, but I don't even know how you found out. I guess Tom kind of helped you along the way, but how to reserve a pier in New York City, all the relationships and management it takes to supply like a giant ship with a bunch of crew on board, and
Mhm.
maybe some of the weirder things you had to get, because I know there were some weird requests.
Yeah, they always keep you on your toes, the Italians. We've had a lot of fun with interesting requests. Well, first I'll talk about like just generally the services that are entailed with bringing a ship into a port. There's a lot. People don't even realize. People just think, oh, you pull the ship up and they tie up and that's it. It's not like that. Like in every port city, for example, New York, there are local pilots that know the harbors, and so they have to board the ship out at sea, and it's really a treacherous job for pilots because I don't know if you've ever seen videos, but a pilot's ladder is one of those rolled out ladders that just hangs off the side of the ship. And this pilot will bring a pilot boat alongside and he'll have to climb up this ladder at sea. And some of these container ships are not the warships as much, but they still are very treacherous. But sometimes there's rough seas and they're climbing up. It's very dangerous. So each pilot has to bring with the captain, bring it to the proper coordinates in order to then pick up tugboats that help to guide the ship into the port. So sometimes you actually have two different pilots, one that knows the outside of the harbor, one that knows the inside of the harbor. And then you have usually at least two or three tugboats that also guide the ship in at certain coordinates and at certain times. Everything has to be coordinated logistically and has to be communicated from the ship to us to the companies that are doing the service. And so once the ship is being brought in by the tugboats, then you have linesmen, longshoremen, the guys that are there pulling the ropes and tying them up. And once the ship is alongside, you have a lot of different services as well. They immediately, first thing they want to do is get rid of all the garbage that they collected. So you have to have the garbage tanks there ready to load up. They have to discharge dirty water, which is all the water that was used for cleaning, cooking, everything throughout the ship has to be taken off, and then fresh water has to be put on for the same purpose of cleaning, cooking, and all that. You have many other services like food service. I mean, if they're out to sea for a long time, they're going to need provisions and to be replenished with fresh produce, fresh fruit, meats, everything that they need. And the Italians are very particular on their food culture. So there's been some fun requests, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, and of course, like you said, you have to reserve the pier too. For example, in New York, there's a lot of cruise ships that go in and out of that pier, and that's the only pier in town to really go to. There's only 3 or 4 berthings there, and if there's a cruise ship coming in, you can't be there because the cruise ship takes up the whole pier. So you got to communicate way ahead of time to make sure, look, we're reserving this pier. We have this ship coming in. We'll be there from these dates to these dates. Then there's like security. This is a military ship. You can't just have anybody walk up to it. There's security barriers you have to put up, security guards you have to put up. Usually, the local police force or military force will come on and give like a briefing of the local area and say, hey, don't go to this part of town, or hey, go to this part of town. You want to do this? It's good. Make sure you don't do that. Like they'll just kind of guide them so they don't get into too much trouble. But yeah, there's a lot of different services, and our role is to be kind of the connection from the port side to the ship side. So we'll communicate ahead of time all of the requirements and all of the guidance, and then help to logistically support them with all the services that they need and request. Other things are like crane rentals. They need to put the gangway that would be going the walk up to go on board the flight deck. You got to get a crane to put that in. There's a lot of little services that you have to oversee. The thing is, you have to be very quick with it too, because when they come into different cities, like say New York City, they're there for 5 days. They want to explore New York City. Might be the only time that they're going to be in New York City their entire lives. So you want to get the food on as quick as possible, all the services done as quick as possible, so that when they do have leave, they can go and explore the city and enjoy their time, not on the ship working, but in the city.
Yeah, and there's some American items that they might not be able to get in Italy. Would you get an iPhone for somebody? I'm sure they have iPhones there, but maybe they're easier to get here.
So 2 or 3 years ago, we had an aircraft carrier. This was actually during COVID. It was really hard to work with this ship, but we had an aircraft carrier down in Virginia. Going back to the cornhole story, they were gifted a cornhole set by the American Navy, and they loved it. Like they weren't allowed off the ship or into the city because of COVID, so they just played cornhole and hung out on the pier. And so we had to provide them cornhole boards. All of them wanted to buy barbecues, like Weber grills and stuff like that, smoker Traeger grills, because they don't really have that over there. These are like personal services. These aren't for like everybody on the ship. Hey, can you help us out? Like, I really want to bring a grill back. They're paying for it, obviously. We just have to be the ones to find it, get the best price, get it to them, especially because it was COVID, so they couldn't even leave. So we were doing a lot of that at that time. But the funny one with that was they were asking for some kind of chocolate bar with nuts in it, and we couldn't get it. I think it was discontinued, and we told them that we could substitute it with the payday bars, which I think is like caramel, peanuts, and chocolate. And we said we can get you these bars. And I said, oh yeah, as long as it has nuts and chocolate, that's like what we're looking for. So okay, we bring them a bunch of them. The next day we come back and they're like, the supply officer comes over and he says, I don't know what was in those payday bars, but I think it's drugs. Everybody loves them. For the next like week, they doubled down the order of payday bars. They bought like we had to go to three different Sam's clubs and buy them out of all the payday bars.
I think I know what it is. I think Americans put a ton of sugar in everything
Oh
we
yeah,
have.
they
That's
probably
probably
getting
the
head highs from the sugar.
yeah. That's funny that they found that so delicious. Americans, when they go to Italy, we like their cuisine as in their dinner meals, like these hearty, filling meals that are rich, and they like our sugar dessert. They come over and that's what they
They have
want.
sweet. They have sweet tooths. Yeah, I mean their breakfast, their hearty breakfast consists of a shot of espresso and a cornetto, a little croissant that has cream or chocolate, and like they have sweet tooths for sure.
I want to get travel so much more as I get older, but I find it's so interesting the differences in cultures around the world, and I
Yeah,
think it's just something people should experience as much as possible, you know?
yeah, it really opens your eyes to how other people live their lives and get along just like you do, but in a different fashion. And it's really interesting to see, especially the food cultures are really interesting to try different foods and different combinations of things, but also just like the dynamic of the culture. One specific difference that I see is the Italian culture is very friendly and close, specifically like with their family. They're very family oriented people. They're always having family dinners, they're always spending time together, and everything revolves around food, whether it be a Sunday dinner or going out to a restaurant. Everybody has a really strong passion for food and for wine and for that whole culture. And so that's one thing I definitely have noticed.
Do you ever think that you and Tom in the future will work with other countries besides Italy, or do you think you'll just continue trying to work with them?
I think we've ingrained ourselves so deeply in our relationships with the Italians. We have a lot of people that we've worked with that now have become friends just because we keep in touch with them and we see them when we go to Rome. And so I don't really know if we would work with any other countries at this point in time. Um,
Croatia? Come
they have
on, they're right next door.
That'd be cool. It would be really cool. They have a small navy. They have small ships, like coastal ships, but I don't know if they go on very big trips. Like I don't know if they go anywhere outside of that
So
bulk.
what you got to do is you got to get Italy going to Croatia. For the audience, me and Anthony are both Croatian. We went on a trip there a few years ago. That's our where our family's from, so we have ties there.
A
He was a
picture.
trader. He went to he's Italy now, but
Well, I like both. They're very similar cultures, believe it or not. I mean, they're right
uh,
across the Adriatic Sea. They're very close to each other. Both very laid back, very food oriented, family oriented, and just like genuinely nice people. But yeah, that was a fun trip that we did with Katie.
yeah,
How long
that
did
was
we
the
stay
first.
there?
Well, you stayed longer. You tried to get me to stay with you when
You
you were
should have.
going. Yeah, yeah, but I think I
We
was there
flew
10
through a
days.
hurricane.
Yeah, I flew back home through a hurricane. I can't believe our flight didn't get canceled. But 10 days, we went to Dubrovnik, Split, Zadar, and Kali, I believe. And we actually did a trip like on a boat where we visited a couple islands that one day. But
Yes, yeah. I think we went past Corcula. We went to
what was that party island?
Rock Island. That was outside of Hvar, but that was like the club owned the island, and it was just a whole club for the island. Like the
Yeah,
island was a club, and they had little ferry boats that would go back and forth to the other island. That was where the people would sleep. That was a cool spot.
that trip was an amazing experience for me. That's the only time I've been out of America in my life. So if you're someone who's never left the country, I don't know, I could say how different it is to experience another culture and society and go somewhere else, but I don't think you can fully grasp it until you're actually there.
Because you're really out of your comfort zone and you're experiencing things that you've never experienced or never even would think to have experienced. And things happen when you're traveling and you're out. Like it's not your normal routine day-to-day life. Like you're going to be faced with some adversities and you're going to be faced with things that you didn't expect to happen. And it really shows your true character and how you deal with certain things that you didn't expect to happen or you didn't want to happen. And you just have to get through it because you're in a foreign country. You have no help. You don't know anybody and you have to find your way. And so it's an adventure.
It's like a skill to be able to just whatever you're faced with, just be able to solve it in the best way that you can and move on.
You have to adapt and just move and find a way.
Yeah, I want to go back for sure.
Yeah, I think we should. Absolutely. It's such a beautiful, beautiful country. It has over 1,000 islands. The food is great. The people are great. The beaches are very rocky, so you got to bring your shoes, your beach shoes. But it's a special place, and we experienced a really special thing also, not just because we were traveling, but also because we were going back to the little fisher town where one part of our family came from. So that was a really
Hmm.
special thing to experience, going back to our family's roots and their homeland and meeting people that are actually related to us that if we never traveled there, we would never even know existed.
We actually were on not even just the island, but the actual property that our family was on at one point in time. And we
Yeah.
took a bike trip. That was a crazy day where we left Katie behind to sit
Yeah.
at the bar with the locals. And we took two broken bikes. I don't know, one didn't have brakes and one was like flat tires or something. They were both broken. And
Yeah.
we like rode up this mountain all the way up to the top and got over the top onto the backside, and it was probably like a mile or so trip that took like 45 minutes or an hour just because both of our bikes were broken. And
Yeah.
we actually got to the real like property lines where our family was at one point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we still have rights to a lot of it, which is a big problem in Croatia, as we have experienced. But we got all the way to that one property that was beautiful. It was on the beach, and we took a little dip in the water, and we made our mark on the coast. I think we made like a little structure with sticks and
Hmm.
rocks. So they knew we were there. But
Yep.
that was special because God knows who the last generation of our family was even there. Um, so just the fact that we made it all the way to Cali, which is actually in this picture, I think that's the Port of Cali. And Elda, how hospitable do you think she was? Like how sweet was it that she took the time out of her day to be so hospitable to us?
Oh, it was incredible. And her husband was a character. He spoke no English, but he was just
What
along for
was
the
his
ride
name
the whole
again?
day. Oh, what was his name? It was something like
Like
very like,
Gregor.
yeah, like a
It's
very
like a
like
tough name.
throwback
It's like
name. Yeah, tough. I'm so
Orville
bad with names. When I meet
or
people, like literally shake hands, tell names, forget it. That's like I don't remember names. I'm so
especially
bad
with a
with it.
name that you've never heard before, like this
Yeah,
guy's Davor,
yeah.
Davor,
Davor.
Davor.
I still have Davor's oil he gave us
That's the
from.
best olive oil I've ever tasted, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Because
Well,
the
it's
special process that they do.
hand picked, hand rolled, and that whatever roller machine he said they have one on the whole island that they have to reserve
Yeah.
times to use it.
It's like hundreds of years old. They have to reserve an appointment to be able to crush your olives in there for a couple hours. And then before they do that, though, they pick the olives and they soak it in the Adriatic Sea, which infuses a lot of salt and a lot of flavor. And so they soak it for like 24 hours, then they dry them out again. So all that salt's in the olives now. And then when you press it, it's already flavored even more so because of the salt water. And it's so tasty, like unbelievable.
Yes, yes, it is. Thank
Yeah.
you. The hospitable trip. What's her name?
Elda was
Elda and
awesome. I
Davor.
send her postcards from time to time. I'll just be like, I'll find like New York City postcard and I'll like, well, Katie will send it or Katie will write it and send it out just to like
And
stay in touch with her. And she's really a nice woman. But yeah, we had an amazing time there in Croatia. It was a lot of fun. I would love to go back.
100%. So you and Tom still kicking along. You got things brewing in the future. Is there anything you want to say about your business or Tom, TLA Associates, before we wrap this up, or think we covered most of it?
Well, yeah, we're still chugging along here. We're working with 3 ships now, which is the first time we're kind of working with more than one ship. And this is the first time I'm working with a ship outside of the North American arena. So we are working with a ship, the Morosini, that's going to Asia. It'll be in Singapore at the end of this month, and we've submitted our bids. Fingers crossed that we achieve and then are granted the work. And hopefully, if we do win the work, I'll be going to Singapore to help service the ship. So that would be really special, great experience, and would be really my first time outside of North America supplying the ship. So that would be special. And then we have right after that, the second week of May, we have another ship coming to North America, coming to Canada. May 11th, it will be arriving in Quebec. So we'll kind of have to bounce back and forth. We've expanded a little bit. We have another guy helping out now. We may have to split up, and Tom and I would go with the ship here in North America, and the other gentleman will go with the ship in Asia.
Actually, now that you mentioned that, it's coming back to me. Didn't you use ChatGPT to help you schedule out who's going to go to what locations at what time?
Yeah, it was really an amazing platform to help just organize everything because I plugged in all the dates and where the ship was going and all the criteria for who needed to be where, who travels together, how many people would need to be at each ship at each time, and all the dates. And it went port by port, week by week, who would go where with which ship, and when they would have to travel based on the travel time and the date that the ship arrives. And I use it as a resource to just kind of organize our brains around because it would took us a long time to write that all out and kind of figure out how to get here to there. And ChatGPT did it in 0.5 seconds. So it was
So,
really an asset.
so you mentioned that you're going to be working with a ship, or possibly could be, that's going to Singapore. So do people speak English there, or do you have, what is that? How does that work?
Yeah, the people there are very interesting. Like they're 12 hours ahead of us. So like when I'm going to bed, they're waking up. A couple nights ago, finally received what we needed to bid. So I was calling Singapore right away. And it was 8 9 a.m. 9 p.m. by us, and I was on the phone probably till 11 p.m. going back and forth with these people. They're very proper and straightforward and straight to the point. They're like, okay, yes, I will do it. Okay, like no no stories, no joking around. Like they're very
Different from
succinct.
Italian, right?
No, these are the Singaporean people I'm talking.
Yeah, but it's very different from working with Italian people, right? Don't
Oh,
they love?
yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
Every meeting in Italy that you have before you have the actual meeting where you talk work, you're having an espresso and like a cookie.
Hmm.
So we ended up drinking a lot of espresso when we're over there going to meetings or being on the ship. You always have an espresso first and you hang out and then, all right, let's do some business. But yeah, the Singaporean people are very quick. And Singapore is a very precise, clean, strict country. I don't know if you remember, like when Donald Trump met with Kim Jong Un for the first time, they did it in Singapore because, I mean, if you are caught with drugs in Singapore, you're going to jail for life. Like they're a very controlled country. And so it's a lot easier for us to do work with them because they are very effective and very good, productive.
So I think after you guys get these trips done and you've worked with now ships coming to America, ships going to other countries, I think this is the final challenge, right? Of working, we're coordinating in two different countries that you're not even located in. I think once you do that, you'll be able to handle any trip that they could possibly do, right?
Yeah, for sure. These two trips, the longer one will end in the end of August, and it'll hopefully set us up to be in a position to support another very long trip that I don't know if it's announced yet, so I can't really speak to it. It would be a long trip in many countries, and it'd be a really special one. So hopefully we'll be in the running for that if we do a really good job, and I know we will with these two ships. So I'm excited, and you're gonna have to come and bring Ricky and your family to Fleet Week in New York. We'll have the
Hmm.
ship there at Pier 90 and I think they'll be doing tours. There's going to be a couple American ships there, a Canadian ship, a British ship, and there's a lot of functions going on. It'll be a really fun time at the end of May. So you guys have to come by. It'll be really cool. Maybe you can have a nice espresso on board.
I'm there. I'm sold already.
Just
Thank you
bring a
so.
couple payday bars with you, and
Yeah.
you'll be good to go. You'll get into anywhere you want on the ship.
Yeah, now I know the secret key to getting an Italian's heart, payday bar.
Sugar.
Yeah.
Before we end, I don't want to end yet.
Oh,
I want to
okay. Okay.
flip the script a little bit and not turn the interview, but I want to transition into more of a finance conversation to hit your target audience because I did study finance in college and I have a finance degree that I don't necessarily use, but I do have an interest in finance. So let's talk a little finance.
Okay. That's funny that you have a finance degree that you don't use, and I have a biology degree that I don't use. Well, so what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about crypto? You want to talk about stocks? You want to talk about real estate? Which
So
one do you want to tackle?
what's your advice for people our age to invest? What's your investment goals and like how do you base your decisions around investing at in your early 20s?
Okay, so for people who are very interested in finance and they follow it, I think you could be a little bit more risk taking because you have the knowledge and you're in it every day. But for someone, this is just general advice for someone who wants to invest and set themselves up for success in their future, but they don't really follow the finance space to a T. There's ETFs out there. So there's the SPY, that's the SPY. Over the course of your lifetime, there's almost no way for a 20-year-old, there's almost no way it will be down. That doesn't mean it won't go up and down and it won't be bumpy along the way, but over a 40-year run, there's going to be major issues if it's down. So if you're someone who wants to set yourself up for success and you're not dedicated to finance, but you just want to set yourself up, I would say dollar cost average into an index fund over the course of your life, and you can't go wrong.
Mhm. And don't be
Yes.
afraid to let it ride in there. Like if it does go down, don't touch
Yeah,
it.
it's got to be money that you don't need to pay your rent next month. Like it's got to be money you're setting for your future, so you'll never need to sell it. So you should
Right.
only invest the money that you're not going to need like next month to
Right.
pay for bills and stuff.
Yeah, I remember one of my finance classes. There was a graph that one of the professors brought up, and it showed the difference between people over like a long period of time, maybe 15, 20 years, that were scared and pulled their monies out during these momentary drops in the market versus the people that just kept their money in. And it ended up that the people that kept their money in throughout those dips are exponentially better off in terms of their return. They're getting a much higher return than the people that were taking it out because they were scared and putting it back in at a certain time. If
Yeah,
you let
well,
it sit, you're going to make a lot more money.
when you think about it, when it goes down is the exact time you don't want to sell and you do want to buy because you're getting
Yeah.
the same thing for cheaper. The notorious saying is like buy low, sell high. And that's very hard for people to do because it's human psychology where they see it going down and they're like, I just can't take it anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
forget exactly the statistic, but it's something like for every time you lose your money, it affects you twice as much as when you gain that same amount. If you were to gain 10% versus lose 10%, losing the money affects your emotions and your psychology twice as much. So
Wow.
that's why
Yeah.
it's so hard for people to, and people don't have the time frame that you need to have for investing. Like it needs to be a decade, 2 decades. And then once you get later in life, there's different strategies when you're finally going to be living off that money. I mean, even though I'm interested in crypto and all this type of stuff and I'm young, so I'll take risks and I'm in the space, so I feel like I have the ability to maybe be a little bit more choosy or picky with what I'm doing. But it's like such a Warren Buffett money method. It's so easy to say, but it's so hard for people to do. You can set recurring investments once a month, once a week, whatever you want, and just
Mm-hmm.
like forget about it and just let it ride forever. And
That's what I do with Bitcoin. I just have like every Wednesday, it's a recurring investment, and it's been
mhm,
doing really well because Bitcoin's been going up. In my investments, I do follow a lot of ETFs, but I also have a lot of exposure to a lot of tech companies, which are
mhm.
getting killed in the recent history. So I just don't even look at my accounts because I know, like what you said with the psychological impact, like it's going to
Mhm.
affect. So I just let it ride because I know those are such long-term companies that are going to be around and be more prevalent in the future that I'm going to let it ride and just set it aside.
Yeah, we're in a really interesting moment in the financial markets where since 2008, the the Fed has been printing money in a way that has just propelled markets so much. So at some point that needed to end. But at some point that does need to begin again because there's a Fed put. Like they will always backstop the market. They're not going to let it go to zero. Think about pensions and all these, it would just be a wreck for everybody. So yeah, those companies, as long as they're companies that make money and have a bright future, you set it and forget it.
I think we're in a really tough economy right now with the inflation and the massive amount of printing of money that the Biden administration is doing and the massive amounts of money that we're sending overseas and the interest rates rising and these banks falling. And I think what is really going to tip the scale or turn everything over is in the end of the summer when students have to start paying their student debt back. And maybe these people have moved on with their lives and haven't really accounted for the fact that they're going to have major payments and they're going to start to default on those payments that are backed by the government, similar to what the housing crisis had happened. And I feel like that's going to be the start of this said recession that we're all anticipating.
I
That's
totally
my
agree.
prediction.
In fact, I even tweeted, it might be like a month ago now. I don't tweet at all. I have a Foster Finance account on Twitter. You could go follow that, but I don't really use it much. But I actually put up, and I'll pop it in here. I put up graphs. I tweeted a whole thesis and theory about how nobody's thinking. And now we're saying this, but they could be forgiven. We don't really know how it's going to play out yet. But if
Mhm.
they're not, and people do have to resume those payments this summer, people are not planning for that. I mean, we're at an all-time in credit usage already. So people are
Oh,
spending what they don't have already.
right.
And that's just going to tip the scale even further. And
Yeah.
this isn't people hear college payments and maybe they think 20-year-olds. No, this goes up to the 40-year-olds now. People are paying these things off for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's a huge part of the people who are involved in the workforce. And I agree that that could be a black swan.
Yeah.
I do think we're in like the final innings of this bear market. I think there will be a final leg lower, and I think it would be good, and then we could finally start to move forward from it. But yeah, I think we could retest the lows that the markets have been at for sure. Go break them possibly,
Mhm.
but I think we're at the tail end of it. I think there'll be one more maybe event. The banks are an interesting situation right now with regional banks having a lot of people pulling out their deposits. So there's a lot that still needs to play out, but I do think maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, I think there could be some events, but beyond that, I think we're kind of towards the end of what this bear market will bring.
I hope so. I'd like to see a nice bull market come in. We
Well,
could use.
we had 15 years basically, almost kind of just right before me and you got to the age where we kind of caught the tail end of it.
Mhm.
Um, so maybe let's hope, fingers crossed for another 15-year run. That would be
Yeah, I
nice.
mean, if you think about it, if you have like money that you could spend, start buying at discounts right now, and 15 years from now, you'll be happy that you did because everything's on sale.
You know what? It is kind of crazy. There is a lot of stuff that is on sale, but there is actually a lot of stuff that is still expensive because like 15-year bull markets aren't the norm. Usually they're
Mhm.
not nearly as long as that. And they printed so much money, which they with COVID, it was a very insane situation. It was better to respond the way they did just to be sure that, it wasn't a collapse. But
Mhm.
since that happened, there's so much excess money that like these passive funds are still being flowed into stocks. So a normal stock will have a PE, which is how much they earn per share. It totally depends on the company, but just say like an average is in the high teens, between 15 to 20. And the more growth you have in the future as a company, the higher your PE will be. For example, Amazon, when it was becoming the giant it is, it didn't even have a PE ratio because they invested all of their profits back into the company. So you can have exceptions, and we're in a new time of investing where people don't care about PEs as much. For example, think companies like Microsoft, they have around a 32 PE right now. Apple, they have like a 28 PE right now. These are very high if you look at the historical trends. A lot of companies are cheap, but there are some still expensive. So I don't want anybody to think everything's cheap. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it does have to. That's why I think the advice of buying an index fund is so key because it's not like one company is going to kill you. Literally, if any company in the world went bankrupt, the index would, sure, if it was Apple, it would go down, but over a long
yeah,
time it'd be fine.
yeah.
So it's like the least risky way you can invest.
In terms of investing, I know I do it. I know my brothers do it. And Katie and our family, they all reach out to Steven. If you have his contact, DM, whatever, get in touch with him. He can give you some custom guidance as to give him some ideas where your head's at, and he can give you some feedback as to where he thinks.
I don't think I could give advice, but I'll definitely give you my opinion. I'll say that for sure.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
which is good. I value it. I will text you from
yeah,
time to time about crypto or about different stocks or
yeah.
real estate, and it's always fun to pick someone's mind about it, especially you because you've dedicated a lot of time and effort to learning and market and learning everything about it. So
It's become my true passion, and I spend most of my day, somehow involved with it. So I'm a giant nerd when it comes to it. I could talk about it forever. So when anybody asks me about it, don't feel like you're hassling me because I love to talk about it. So
yeah, yeah, and some of my
yeah,
friends I know, like Mike would text you or
yeah.
Craig reach out and be like, "Hey, what do you think about Ethereum now? Should I hold on to it or should I
Hmm.
sell? Like, what's going on?" So
Yep.
yeah, it's a valuable resource. Foster Finance is there for you guys.
I'm always here, and I'm going to keep trucking along, keep
Oh
putting
yeah,
out podcasts. This is only going to grow in the future. Yeah. So I guess this is finally the end, unless you
okay.
have, okay. So
We have
thank you for
places
coming
to
on.
be.
I'm going to have you on in the future after you complete these trips and you could tell me the stories about those
Yeah,
in the
for
coming
sure.
year or
After the
so.
summer, yeah, after
Yeah.
these two trips in the end of the summer, and we can recap how it all went down, and it should be an exciting summer of work and dealing with the Italian Navy, and I'll have a lot of fun new stories to tell.
So best of luck to you. How do I say good luck in Italian?
Buona fortuna. Or
Bona fortuna.
buona fortuna. Or you could say in boca al lupo, which means it's kind of like a break a leg idiom, like we use in American English. It means in the mouth of the wolf, in boca al lupo, and you respond,
Interesting.
crepi al lupo, death to the wolf.
And
Like
boca
you're in
al
the mouth of
lupo.
the wolf. You're in the mouth of the wolf, and you respond death to the wolf because you killed the wolf.
Ah, that's kind of
In
cool. I
boca
like
al
that.
lupo, crepi al lupo, or just say crepi, like death to the wolf.
Great tip right there. All right.
Yeah.
So
All
thank you for
right.
coming on. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Sounds good. Keep in
All right.
touch.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
Ciao.